Okay, so you get to Findlay Prep in 2006. Kind of talk about that first year, building your system and your culture. I'm kind of curious how that
Yep.
all went.
Yep. Well, in the first year I was the head coach there, it was, yeah, here I had coached before at the Division II level, and at the Division II level, like, it's the head guy and you.
Hmm.
He probably gets one assistant, then you can get volunteer guys, but
Yeah,
they're coming after their day job.
right.
So they're not as involved. So you get to do everything and you're learning everything. So, you're responsible for everything. So you're multitasking and just, I hate to use the word because I think it's overused sometimes, but to me, that's really grinding.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
especially if you're doing some laundry sometimes and all that stuff. So handing out and distributing, equipment and gear.
Yeah.
So, uh, you know, it, it, so I knew, and I had learned I was fortunate. The guy I played for he was like almost like one of Don Meyer's sons. I
Hmm.
mean, him and Don. So I was always around Don Meyer. We were always doing stuff with Don Meyer and little mini clinics and going to stuff.
Yeah.
And my guy just, kind of grew up knowing and teaching and his background. And so I was fortunate that I knew that I had been on the floor and I coached. I knew the game,
Hmm.
I knew a lot about it, and then obviously working with Coach Kruger at that higher level, you get to see a new level of things and
Yeah.
the way they operate, the way they handle and treat their players and deal with stuff. So, I went in there and, like anything, everybody, what's your philosophy? What's your philosophy? Well, how do you want to play? What's
Hmm.
important to you? It's like anything as a head coach, you got to have your non-negotiables, and again, I don't think you can have 7 or 8 because
Hmm.
then kids are just going to be like, well, God, you're emphasizing everything. And
Yeah.
I think you can have 3, maybe 4. And the 2 things that I've always said were my things. Number one, above and beyond anything, the root of everything for me, conditioning.
Yeah.
We are going to be in phenomenal shape. And that is an area that players are not going to be able to come in and have conversations and say, well, coach, can we
Yeah.
do? No,
And
they
that's,
knew that.
as a player, that's the hardest, that's the
Yes.
hardest thing
Yes.
to do.
You'll hate me in September,
Yep.
but you'll thank me in February.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you got to trust me. So that's number one. And then number 2, we're going to defend. We're going to defend. We're going to guard. If you don't and you can't or you won't, then it's going to be hard for you to play. So those 2 things, and then you build it around that. Obviously, then you can look for one of the things. Finley, we were fortunate to be able to attract talent, high level talent.
Yeah. No doubt.
In the later years, obviously, one of the things that we always had, size. Like you see now, length and skill set combined are the key. You got 6'8" 2 guards in the league. I look back at the 2012 team, and we had the smallest guy we had was 6 foot tall. Our 2 guard was 6'5". Winston Shepard was 6'7" at the time. Anthony Bennett was 6'8". Brandon Ashley was 6'8".
Hmm.
Nigel Williams-Goss was 6'4". Dominic Artis was the smallest guy at 6 foot.
Yeah.
He was tough. He was tough as nails. So that size was, and they were all skilled. They are all skilled players. So I just wanted, for me, I used to ask our assistants, when we recruit, is like, okay, when you go recruit a player, who can play for the way we are in our culture and the way we want to play and what we demand and how we demand. And they were always tough. Those guys got to be tough mentally, which is also coupled with physical toughness. And then 2, they have to have a basketball feel or IQ. And I heard this the other week, the if factor, the if factor, instinct and feel. That to me is huge. Corey Joseph, I got to be honest with you, I think there were several reasons why we're so successful, but one of the things that isn't talked about as much, we had a ton of guys that had high basketball IQs.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say probably, if not the highest, probably the top two, in my opinion, Corey Joseph and Nick Johnson. Nick Johnson went on to play at Arizona.
Yeah.
Unbelievably high IQs. Just, they knew hey, instead of this, we're going to run it this way. And boom, without any glitches or hiccups, they just knew exactly what you wanted, meant, and were talking about, and they could do it. And so, but that doesn't mean the other guys didn't.
Right.
We had guys that all had just high IQs and great feel and instinct, which really made coaching a lot easier because you could do things, implement new things quickly and easily and on the fly.
Yeah, no doubt. And another thing with, like, I've listened to you talk about coaching talent, you know, on other various things you've done. And I think people think, you know, have a idea that it's harder to coach a bunch of talent together. But in reality, do you think, or maybe is it easier because all of these guys are so determined and driven? You know, what are your thoughts on that?
I think like anything, and I don't say this to be as a cop out, but it depends. It depends on the guys, you know.
True.
The character of the individuals, what is their motivation? You know, if you can, in some ways it's easier.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's harder, because here's what you have to do. You have to convince guys. We used to say, you are this is like college. This is what you're going to encounter in college. You came from being the man, like the guy. And every night you needed to, and you were going to be the guy. Well, guess what? Now that you've got to share that title or that presence with 6 or 7 other guys. You know what I mean?
Which is crazy.
So one drill I think we always did that was great at the beginning of the year, and hand out an index card. And I would say, okay, write your name on it. Or I don't know if I did that or not. Yeah, I think I did. Okay, 32-minute game. Hand them out to 10 guys. How many minutes do you want to play? I write it on there. And I put down, here's 180 minutes in our game. I get them back, and I'd write them all down. And I wouldn't write their names or initials, but I'd write each number down. Okay, I go down 30, 30, 30. And I say, guys, we're at 240 minutes here.
Yeah.
I can't, I can't call the National High School Federation and say, hey, let's make the games longer. I go, it is what it is. So you need to give me back, I need 60 minutes. So I hand the cards back out. Say, okay, now knowing that, let's change that. Some guy would change it, get it down. Okay, now we're at 200. I go, okay, that's good. We're making progress. Guys, we're still 20. I need 20 more minutes.
Right.
The game can't go on. So we go through that drill, and it was pretty good. I mean, because then you get guys that knew they weren't, maybe they were more of a role guy in that team and in our program, and it got them to understand. Oh wow, you know. So I'm looking at Anthony Bennett, and I'm thinking, if I'm asking for 24, and he needs 20 more minutes back from all of it, golly, if everybody does 2 minutes, I go to 22. I mean, Bennett's probably, you know, what's he saying? He's probably changed his, obviously. So it's kind of like, you know, that opened their eyes and got them to learn and understand kind of, you know, the dynamics of that whole deal. But so, you know, anything, you know, things like that, opening their eyes to things that they didn't think about, and they don't really, you know, because players, I just want to play. I just want to hoop.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you got to manage minutes, and, you know, you got to understand that it's not just about, you know, there's 8 legitimate guys here that could and should probably get 30 plus minutes.
Yeah.
So, you know, selfless guys got to be selfless and unselfish. And the sooner you can coexist with higher level talent, the better off you're going to be. And that's convincing guys. And I always try to make it, you know, get them to really understand. I use a lot of analogies so that guys can really understand the message and where you're coming from. Like I told Dominic Artis, he was really struggling with not starting, like starting. And I used to always say it every year. I say, okay, guys, look, guys that are so hell-bent on starting, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start you. We're going to win the jump ball. I'm going to call a timeout. I'm going to sub your ass. So now you can call your boys and tell everybody, oh, yeah, I started. That doesn't, who finishes the game is what's important.
Yeah.
And, and understand that, everybody's effort and everybody's contribution is significant. So I told him this. I sat him and his parents down in a room, and I said, hey, look, so you're going to go to Oregon next year. Let me ask you this. So you're struggling right now. That's why we're having this meeting, and you can't get past it. And I've tried to explain it to you. I'm going to put some scenarios in front of you. You come to Findlay Prep and you start, and we do really well. And then you go to Oregon and you start. That's ideal. That's great. Win-win. You're happy because you're going into a setting that you're used to, start to start.
Yeah.
Let's say you start here, go to Oregon, don't start. 1 year from now, I'm not the one sitting in front of you. You're going to be sitting in that, and he's probably not going to sit with the parents, but he's going to be Dana Altman.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to go through these struggles and this conversation with him. So it's going to delay your progress.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's not a great situation. Now, you don't start here, but then you go to Oregon and start. Another win for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, you don't start here and you don't start at Oregon. Probably pretty good, because when you get there, you've done it before and you understand the importance and significance of that. And you understand it doesn't matter because you're going to develop and get better. And that kind of opened his eyes, and he was great with that. But it took that conversation for him to understand and to realize that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And he ended up being the starting point guard for Oregon, right? For a couple of years.
Yes, he actually did pretty well.
Yeah. All right, one more question about Findlay. So that time or era was kind of different as far as like social media and just eyeballs in general. Mm-hmm. And you guys had you had the cameras rolling. How do you think that team would have, how do you think people would have reacted to that team in, today's world?
I think toward the end of my time there, I think we were kind of getting a flavor, or they were getting a taste of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously now, like I always say, it's so different now. Part of it scares me to think if I were still there trying to do what we did. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know that it could be done. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying we couldn't, but it makes me nervous sometimes thinking about it because of the social media. And the social media it's a form of pressure. There's a pressure that comes with that, living up to expectations and the hype. And kids are so consumed with the social media part of it, and likes and followers and all that stuff. That could become a major distraction, and that could be detrimental to the success of a team in any given season. If one or two guys is really into that aspect of things and it affects them like that, now you just talking a whole different element. And I don't know, but I think, we got, through the early success and the quick success we had, the best thing that really happened was the success of our program, number one, but then also the quick success of the players getting drafted.
Yeah.
So now it made my job easier, because now all of a sudden dealing with Winston Shepard was like, okay, you're going to come into practice and just lay an egg today. Okay. I'm just going to tell you this. You got no chance of hanging a banner for your time here. Because I know this, Tristan and Corey and Avery did not ever come in on a day like this. So it worked for them because we're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you're questioning and don't think it's going to work. Well, I'm going to tell you, what is the problem? It's not what we're doing, because those guys made it work. It's you. And so easy to point to banners and to their banners up in the rafters and say, you know what, they didn't have a problem with it. It worked for them. So either get on board or, find someplace else. And they did. They embraced it. And that was the big thing, is we always had I was big on internal leadership. Winston Shepard used to just get pounded by Tristan his first year. Tristan would just, pound it. Well, it was great to see the evolution of Winston, because he's one of my favorites. Then he went to the guy submitting the poundings to guys, you know what I mean, by his junior and senior year especially. And he was phenomenal. But it took him going through that with Tristan to see it and to go through it, to appreciate it, and to truly embrace and trust it, and then to carry on and pass that torch down to the next guy.
Right.
And that's when you have that, now you have a program of sustainability.
For sure. Was the conditioning you guys did pretty tough? Did you ever have anyone, like pack their bags?
I wouldn't say they packed their bags, but they might, get off to the side and go throw up, or, sit out a couple sprints, something like that. But, the one form of pressure that's still the greatest form of pressure is peer pressure. Guys would push through the wall that they didn't know was there, because it was pride at some point. And that's what you want through, at least for us, that's what we always wanted in conditioning. Conditioning was more about the mental toughness than it was the physical. You see Chris Beard always goes 4 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a night thing. Mental is to physical as 4 is to 1. It's 4 times more important or significant or greater than the mental aspect than the physical aspect. And it's so right. Doing the 6 a.m. stuff wasn't about just, physically trying to crush them.
Yeah.
It was giving them, it was going to build confidence in them.
Right.
Because, when at the end of the game and they were like 32 minutes, that's it. Coach, I could literally go at least another half before I would even think about being tired.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to that point, you can run through teams.
Yeah.
And that was always our goal and our objective with conditioning.
Yeah. Man, that series was awesome. Do you ever go back and watch that now that, that's some years back?
My son's 12, so he's into hoop. So he does sometimes throughout the year, and he'll call me and he'll say something, or he'll try to quote something that I said, and some of the stuff I just forgot. I like, that sounded pretty good. Where'd you get that? And you said that.
I swear to you, man, it seemed like a Netflix show watching it. That thing was awesome.
Oh, that's good. Some guys I appreciate that. Some guys tell me they used to, a good friend of mine, Ryan Schmidt, who's now with the Toronto Raptors organization, was at 22-foot Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Him and his brother were down there coaching that program. And he goes, every fall, right before our season started, preseason, he goes, the night before, we'd sit down, at night, we'd get whatever we were having, if it was a beer or a soda, whatever. We'd say, we're doing it. This is what we're watching it. And we'd watch whatever episodes we'd watch. And he goes, that would get us ready for the season. I always used to laugh. I said, well, I'm glad it helped you. I'm glad somebody found it useful.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So obviously you have the, great success there. So then the next year you went with the Blazers D-League?
Yep. So each spring, NBA teams would, gather intel, on players.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean Kiley, who's in the front office with the Blazers, used to call me in the spring, and we kind of developed. He'd ask about some of our guys, but some of the guys weren't our guys that maybe we played against, or guys that I had worked with at the academies, the skills academies, or the NBA Top 100 camp that I'd coached, So he'd try to get, info on those guys, right. Intel. And so I'd chat it up with him, and we'd talk. And then the one spring before the fall that I ended up going there, he called, and just nothing. And then in July, he hit me and said, hey, you can be down at the NBA Summer League. I said, yeah, a couple of our guys are playing, our former players are playing. So I'll be there. He goes, okay, I'll reach out when we get down there. Okay, great. Sure enough, he calls me one night. I'm in the Thomas and Mack watching Jorge Gutierrez play.
Yep.
And
you went to Miami, right?
What's that?
Where did he play in college?
He ended up going to Berkeley.
Cal. Okay.
Mike Montgomery. Yep.
Oh.
And so I go, yeah, I'm in Thompson Mack. He goes, where are you sitting? I said, this side, halfway up, whatever. Okay, I'll be right there. He came down and sat with me for about 2 hours. We were just talking about different stuff. And it was the first time he had asked me kind of about, hey, Coach, what do you want to do ultimately? What's your aspirations,
right.
Long term? And, it's the first time he'd ever asked me that. And I kind of, said, college is something I'd like to eventually maybe jump into, and kept it kind of vague. And after a couple hours sitting there, we parted ways and nothing happened. That was July. Then September rolls around, and this is how fast stuff happens. So it's September. It's probably, I don't know, the first week of September. And he calls, and we have a conversation, and he tells me, look, Coach, we're looking for our head coach for our D-League team.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, wow. He goes, would you be interested? I go, well, I'd definitely be interested in hearing more. Boom. That's all he needed. I'm going to get you on the phone with our assistant GM, Billy Branch. Boom. Hang up. Billy Branch calls me. We talk for, I don't know how long. He explains things to me. And he says, okay, we're going to get you, if you have interest, we want you to do a Skype interview with Neil, the GM, and Terry Stotts, who had just gotten there. And I said, okay, yeah, great. Okay, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock or whatever. I said, fine. So I get that. Literally next morning, I'm on a Skype, the whole front office. Neil O'Shea, Billy Branch, Terry Stotts, their salary cap guy, there's 2 scouts. I'm on like this, and they're all sitting at a conference table. And I have about an hour. To me, it wasn't even really an interview.
Yeah.
It was more a conversation and explaining things, how it was going to work. And there were some couple interview questions, and Billy tried to groom me the day before. Okay, Mike, here's what they might ask you, about specific X's and O's type stuff. I was like, okay, great. And so we hang up on the Skype interview. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Look forward to hearing back from you. Boom, hanging up. Well, it was probably a couple hours later, Neil calls me, the GM, and offers me. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, now, here's the thing. I need to know by 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'm like, okay, not a problem. And it wasn't a problem. I go, let me just go home, talk to my wife. My wife, I'd already talked to my wife about it. I knew what we were going to do. So, like, no problem. Boom. I didn't even wait. That night I called him, said, I'm in. Let's do it. Okay, boom. We're going to do a announcement, whatever. You need to, I'm going to give you the number to the guy in Boise. I want you to fly in there. He's going to set everything up, do your press conference, da-da-da. I'm like, great. All right. I'm going to tell my team tonight. So we called our guys back in, or that next morning. They had already heard. I have no idea how it got out, but a couple guys had heard something or saw something on social media, and they kind of asked me, and my response was, look, man, you cannot believe that stuff that you read all the time. I mean, people make up stuff all the time. And then later that night, I was calling in to tell them the news. And
that was when you were at Findlay, right? I remember that episode.
Yeah. I sat at my desk and I told them.
They were sad, Coach. They were really sad.
Nigel was the one, because he was the only kid
coming back, right?
Well, he was the only kid that we ever took as a freshman that we had for 4 years.
I forgot about that.
And I always said we would never take another kid that young, just because a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old, it's just there's just too much of a difference. So, but he ended up being pretty special.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm kind of, I want to ask you kind of about the state of the game now, as far as like, circuits and stuff like that. You coached in the UIBL, right? Yes. How was that experience? Did you like it?
So the year I was out, I was always, I thought there was value in AAU, and I still think there is. Those kids traveling, and playing in venues and playing against high-level talent, that's tremendous value when they go on to college. I mean, so they're not shell-shocked by the travel. They're not shell-shocked by venues. They're not shell-shocked going against other elite talent. So there's tremendous value. But to be honest, the way personally that I coach, that practice is so valuable. Preparation is so valuable. Teaching is so valuable. Those things take time.
Yeah.
And I know, that's the last thing. You don't get any time. You get no practice time. If you do, there's probably going to be 50% of your team that's not going to be there.
Yeah.
I was so reluctant, and I was like, ugh. So Anthony Brown calls me, let's just go have breakfast and talk. So we talked for 3 hours. And I'm like, you know what? I'm here anyway. I'm driving my wife nuts. It gets me back out and, out visible in front of coaches, and stuff. So I said, and I liked the personnel that we had: Charles O'Bannon, Troy Brown, and Marcus Howard. They're guards, and they got a little size. Troy was 6'6".
Oh, Troy Brown, right?
Troy Brown, yep. Charles O'Bannon was 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah.
And they could all score. And I was like, anything that I do that I like, the way I like to play offensively, it's going to be great because I got guys that can actually do that stuff. So I was like, you know what? Yeah. And then just get us a couple filler guys or role guys that we can, because these are going to be the feature guys.
Yeah.
So I went in and did that, and it had a great run. First year on the EYBL circuit, we qualified for Peach Jam. And as those guys were just coming out of their sophomore year, so they were going to be juniors, and going into the EYBL for the first time and qualifying for Peach Jam, I thought was
that's
phenomenal.
That's
so it was a success. I would have said it was a successful run. I enjoyed it. Is that circuit something I would ride out and do for the rest of my? No.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the differences between the major 3 circuits?
EYBL is just it's organized. It's it's precise. They execute. Yeah, they're the model. They execute it.
Yeah,
it's big time. Period. They make the coaches wear polos and slacks. So they want it to look so that the perception of it is big time. And Nike can do that because they're going to flood you with a bunch of merch and gear to make you look good, and it is. And the kids all wear the newest shoes that are, and the league is, the way they did it at different sites, and it's officiated and it's scored and the schedule's set. And it's the organization and the execution of it is huge. And not to say the others aren't,
right,
but they did it first.
Yep.
And they did it first class.
I mean, it's literally like you've coached in it, so is it just like a mini college game? I feel like it's just a bunch of college players out there.
Yes. Yes. Because from a recruiting standpoint, like we talk about here, especially at UTSA, if you can get an EYBL kid, that's significant. That translates because they played against high-level competition. It's like getting international guys that played for their U18 teams. You know what I mean? They're playing with men that are worried about paying their bills and going home to their wives. That's a different level. There's a maturity that goes with that. So I just think that those circuits have done a phenomenal job with creating those leagues.
Yeah. I mean, obviously now everything's played out. It's kind of all the same, Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like that G League, the pathway or the next level thing. What do you think about that? I think
What's that?
Where the top guys, the top high school guys from last year.
Oh, yeah.
They're all playing in the G League now on like a team.
Yep. Deshaun Nix and those guys.
Jalen Green. Do you think that, I mean, they're getting paid $500,000. Do you see that, taking off?
Again, I think for a little while, I have not been in any conversations or talked to people that know the ins and outs, but as an outsider and no one have been there, I think what they're doing is very smart, and it's not surprising that the NBA is a step ahead of it because basically you're taking lottery pick level guys and you're going to give them, because there is a transition. The NBA game and the college game, they're different. I mean, here again, the women's college game more resembles the NBA pro game than the men's. 4 quarters, you get to advance it to half. You know what I mean?
That's
the
weird.
Foul situation. I don't know why the men wouldn't do that, you know. So throwing those guys in that, especially lottery level guys, and giving that experience so that when they do get to their franchise teams, they've got experience.
Yeah.
They don't just flop, because let's face it, some of those guys flop and lottery guys can't. So I think it's smart. I think is it a trend that will continue? I think it will. I don't know how much it will. I don't know how much they'll want it to grow.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll have a, you know, because obviously there's only 13 lottery.
They probably want to just keep it at like a select few, honestly.
Exactly.